Good night. This is U.S. Immigration Attorney Sharifa Tharpe. I am here live to take your U.S. immigration related questions. So go ahead and put your questions in the comments and I will go ahead and answer. So I have a good topic to talk to you about tonight. I saw in the news that the Department of Homeland Security has now announced that they're going to be focusing less on workplace raids. So the workplace raids is where they send in the agents to check the workers' immigration status, and then if there's someone who is undocumented or multiple workers who are undocumented, they would be detained and they go through deportation proceedings. Well, they're saying that they're going to focus less on that and instead focus on employers who are taking advantage of undocumented workers, abusing undocumented workers, and in order to lessen the abuse that happens to undocumented workers. So that is good news. And when I was looking through the article, it did, provide quotes of Mayorkas. Mayorkas is the head of the Department of Homeland Security. And he said the goal here is to not only target the employer, but also protect the undocumented worker who reported the employer's mistreatment or misconduct. And when he said that, when he described the process of protecting the worker from deportation as a result of them reporting the mistreatment by their employer, he was talking about the T visa. So yesterday I went through a number of different options, alternatives. If you're here and you don't have family, you don't have an employer who's willing to apply for you legally, and you have no other ties to the U.S., then, and you're in a situation where you are working under the table and you are being abused by an employer, then this T visa could be for you. So T visa is for victims of trafficking. And once you have reported what is happening, so if you work in unsafe conditions, if your employer is taking advantage of your immigration status, they're not paying you, if they are abusive towards you, if you have a feeling like you can't leave because they're going to report you, if they're keeping you confined to continue to work, if they're forcing you to work longer hours than you should be working, then you should really explore the T visa. And this is what I do for my clients. So you can schedule a consultation if you're in a situation like this, and then we can talk more about what you're going through and whether you can fall under, qualify for this T visa. Now let me talk about some of the benefits of the T visa. So the T visa allows anyone who has been trafficked in regards to labor or even sex trafficking to seek protection from deportation while the process is pending and while an investigation is going forward based on your report. Now, usually a report is required, and there are some exceptions. So their reports are usually required to the Department of Labor, or in some cases, for example, with sex trafficking or extreme abuse related to the employer, labor trafficking, law enforcement may need to get involved. And in the case that you reported to the police, to the Department of Labor, then this could possibly be another avenue for you to get the T visa. The reason being, once it's reported, then that law enforcement agency or the Department of Labor even would be able to complete a T certification that would let the government know, that the USCIS, where you would be applying for the T visa, that you indeed went through this and you cooperated with them in during the investigation, or you continue to cooperate with them, or you remain available to cooperate with them in their investigation about the employer or if anybody else force you to do anything against your will. So I am Vishali. Can you stay in the US if you come on a J1 visa? So once you have completed you have to abide by the terms of the J1 visa. And so once your term has come to an end, then you must comply by leaving, unless you have a direct path to go from the J1 to another status. But the J1 alone isn't going to just be able to let you stay in the US. So with the T visa, it allows you to get a work permit once you're approved for the next 4 years. However, if you spend 3 years out of the 4 years with this T visa, then you possibly have an avenue to apply for adjustment of status. That means you have an avenue to permanent resident. And in addition to that, if your family is here with you and they're without their papers, they can also benefit from T status as well. So here's a question. If someone that used to live in the US and has a green card but it expired, how can you go about renewing it if you don't live in the country? So green card holders, if a green card holder does not live in the United States and they have not lived in the United States for over a year, then it is automatically assumed that they have abandoned their permanent residence. And so what you will find is that some individuals, when they're trying to get back into the United States after living outside of the United States on a green card, they will get their green card officially revoked. So it's not, once you have lived outside of the US, then it's presumed that you have abandoned residency. There is what's called an SB1 visa that allows individuals who had their green card, who have been outside of the country for more than 1 year, to reapply to enter the United States and then get back their green card through the process, of course, once they get here. No, but whether you get approved for that is going to depend on the reason that you left. So usually you have to show that you continue to maintain ties in the United States, that you didn't intend to leave, but some circumstances beyond your control caused you to end up staying, or circumstances such as some exceptional circumstances caused you to stay outside of the United States for that long. And now you want to get back to your life. So if you would like to schedule a consultation to figure out if the SB1 visa is for you, you can definitely call, schedule that consult, and we can get started. So if you're married but your spouse lives out of the US, Gemini, you would have to go through consular processing. So if your spouse lives outside of the United States, this is what I'm thinking you're asking is, what would the process be? And so you would have consular processing means that your spouse, your foreign spouse that lives outside of the United States, is going to you as a petitioner would file the petition. Once it's approved, then it goes to the embassy, where they're going to attend the interview at the embassy and get an immigrant visa to come to the US. And once they land in the US, they become a permanent resident. So that process right now is taking about 18 to 24 months. If I was married to a US citizen and I divorced my spouse because of abuse, is there a way I could petition for myself? So certified blessed. Yes. So if you have been abused by your spouse and you're divorced, but you were divorced for less than 2 years, then you may be able to qualify for VAWA, and that is a process of self-petitioning for status for the work permit and then for permanent residence. This is an area I focus on. So if you are in this situation, you want legal advice and representation through your process, go ahead, call, schedule a consultation. There is a scheduling coordinator who is available up until 11 p.m. tonight to take your call and schedule that time. So do you still have to fill joint taxes? So joint tax returns are not required. However, it is helpful if you're filing your joint tax returns. which, you know, it just depends on what's your tax situation. Does it work for the both of you to file jointly? And if it doesn't, and you know you have other ways of showing your bona fide marriage, then you don't necessarily have to file joint taxes. But Gemini Beauty, the information I'm giving you here is general information. It's not personal legal advice. And so I wouldn't be able to tell you specifically whether you should file jointly or not. It is good evidence of the bona fide marriage. And so if you can, you should definitely file your taxes together, but it's not an absolute requirement. It's not an absolute requirement for this type of application. So I was talking about the T visa. So it was in the news that the Department of Homeland Security will no longer be focusing on workplace raids, where they go in and they seek out undocumented workers, detain them, and deport them. Instead, they said they're going to focus now on protecting abused undocumented workers who report employer abuse, and then focus on disciplining, targeting, investigating abusive employers. And what they're talking about is the T visa. So by protecting this person from deportation, you can do that through the T visa, where if you do report your employer who's being abusive towards you, then that could lead to you getting a work permit for the next 4 years and then eventual path to permanent residence. Now, what does an abusive spouse, not spouse, but employer look like? So in the case that if they're not paying you, or they're paying you way less than you should be paid, if they're missing payments, if they're threatening you and saying, well, if you challenge me, or if you don't follow what I say, I'm going to report you, or if they say, I don't have to pay you, you're undocumented, what can you do? These are examples of actions that the employer, abuses actually, that the employer can get into a lot of trouble for. And so if you're in this situation, you don't have to be, and there are ways to be able to apply, get protection from the government, and then get permission to work legally, so you don't have to deal with these sorts of abuses. So let us see. I'm just looking for more questions. Now, I just want to remind you that I'm here to answer your questions. So go ahead and put your questions in the comments, and it doesn't matter that your questions are not related to the topic that I'm talking about. I want to hear it. As long as it's immigration related, I still want to hear your questions. So, or rather see your questions in the comments. So put those questions in the comments. I will answer them. I have been telling you about the T visa. So the next thing is that your family members can qualify for this as well, not just you. So if you're going through this and you qualify, you've reported it to law enforcement, the abuse, or you've reported it to the Department of Labor. That's what I help my clients do as well. I help them with the reporting process, and then I help to obtain what's called the T certification. And it is a way for the law enforcement or the Department of Labor to confirm that yes, you did cooperate with their investigation. Now, the investigation doesn't necessarily have to mean that you have to go testify in court. It doesn't mean that you will get into trouble. It doesn't mean that you have to have constant contact with law enforcement. But what it does mean when you get the T certification is, yes, you reported it, you made yourself available through the report to assist in the investigation. And so that is the reason for the certification. And it doesn't have to, it doesn't have to result in the arrest of the employer or the discipline of the employer for you to still qualify for the T visa. Now, family members who can get it are if you're under 21, a spouse, your parents, your sibling under 18 and unmarried can, as well as your children, can get this status along with you. if you're 21 and over, then your spouse and your children who are under 21 and unmarried can also get this T status. So it goes a long way. It not only helps the person who is going through the labor trafficking, but it also helps their family members who are in the same situation here in the United States. Thanks so much for the love. I appreciate it. So that is something that you should keep in mind. Now, if there are 2 exceptions to the T certification, that's where you have to get the law enforcement or the Department of Labor to complete the relevant forms to say that yes, you went through this and you reported it. There are times when you don't have to get this certification, but keep in mind that that's what I do. So I take the stress off of my clients by doing the legwork of getting the certification for them. I understand that it is a stressful process and it can be an intimidating process to contact law enforcement, and so I step in to do that part, so it's not terribly stressful on my clients. But there are situations where you don't even have to get it. Now, the 2 situations are if you were traumatized by what happened to you. So if the employer really put you through the ringer and it led to trauma, then that could be a way to be exempted from getting the T certification from law enforcement. And also if you were a minor. So if you were a minor that went through this, especially with sex trafficking, then this could exempt you from seeking the T certification. Now, I know the next question may be, well, you don't have evidence, and that is not, if you're in this situation or we're in this situation, a lot of trafficking victims don't have evidence because either the trafficker set things up in such a way that you are unable to gather evidence. Sometimes your statement is what is all you have. And I help my clients to put together a good detailed statement to let the officer accept it as evidence and for them to fully understand what you went through and why you qualify for the T visa. So that is, now once you apply for the T visa, you would do the biometrics, and then it's taking about a year. After about a year, you'd get a decision. It could be a couple months, but prepare for about a year processing time, especially with the backlogs. And if approved, then you would be able to get that work permission to work for the next 4 years. And then if you retain the T status for 3 out of those 4 years, you would be able to apply adjust status. Now, what if you were here and you're here without status? So you know clearly this is a benefit, a form of relief for individuals who are undocumented. But what if you cross the border without permission and then you got into this situation where you had an abusive employer? That could still qualify you for the T visa, but you may need a waiver. And a waiver is a way to get forgiveness for any past immigration violations. So if you overstayed your visa, you now accrued unlawful presence, that means you've overstayed over 180 days, then the waiver would be able to help to fix that, and you are allowed to apply for the waiver along with your application. Now, and once you get to the point where you have the T visa and now you want to go for adjustment of status, you are able to apply for a waiver for that as well. Now, if the labor trafficking, for example, if the employer was the one who convinced you to come to the United States through fraud or coercion, and your arrival into the United States, your overstay is directly linked to the employer, then you may not need a waiver. You may not need forgiveness for the overstay or the unlawful presence. But whether you need a waiver or not is going to require a detailed evaluation of all your facts So for example, if you got arrested, that it may present a situation where you will need a waiver. And if you got arrested but it was in no way related to the actual labor trafficking or sex trafficking, then in that case you're going to have to file that waiver and ask for forgiveness for any inadmissibilities caused by the arrest. But the good news is that you can apply for these types of forms of relief while you're in the United States, applying for the T visa at the same time. So let me see. I don't see any questions so far. So once it's been processing, once it's been prepared, properly filed, then it pens. You'll probably do the background check in between. You'll do a biometrics, and then all being well, no request for evidence, then you would get a decision. There's no interview for this, so you don't have to stress yourself out about going to an interview to get this benefit. However, what they do require is evidence that's really going to let them understand why you qualify, and that is why preparation is very important with this form of relief, and that's where I come in. So if you are going through a situation like this, you are working for an employer who's taking advantage of your situation as an undocumented immigrant, they're being abusive, they're threatening, they are paying you little and nothing, or they're skipping payments, they are subjecting you to conditions that are similar to confinement, then this could be a way for you to escape the situation, finally get permission to work legally in the United States, and move forward. I help my clients to do this once I determine they qualify. And the way I determine whether you qualify, of course, is in a personal consultation, because this is general information. This is not personal legal advice. So do not act on this until you can speak with an attorney to get legal advice about your particular circumstances. If you would like to schedule a consultation, go to the link in my bio. It's going to take you to the website where you can once you get to the website, you'll see a phone number, you will see a contact form, and even an online chat. All three lead to the scheduling coordinator, who will put you on my schedule, and we can get to talking about whether you qualify for this form of relief. So if you are working with a company and get injured and they don't do anything about it, what can you do? So that if it depends on what the nature of the injury was, and how they reacted or how they failed to react. So this is where the consultation is very important, because it really comes down to facts and what you went through, what your employer put you through. Was the employer the cause of the injury? Did you try to let them know you were in an unsafe situation, and did they ignore your request to get you out of the situation? And that's going to, in regards to immigration, that is what's going to determine whether you qualify for this. Now, as for your injury, that's not, if you are looking at compensation for the injury, or whether there is to seek advice about whether the employer is liable in any way, then you would have to speak to a personal injury attorney who would be able to advise you on that aspect of it. But if you receive the injury because of the employer or because of unsafe conditions that you're in, then you should definitely schedule a consult, and let's talk more about whether you qualify for that. Thanks so much, PhotoWorks. I appreciate the compliments. So that's it for me on the T visa, and the reason I came with this information is because I received good news that and it's in the news, that the Department of Homeland Security has now announced that they will not be focusing so much on they will stop workplace raids. That's where the agents would come in, they would find undocumented workers, detain them, and take them away. But rather, they're going to be focusing on reports of employer abuses of undocumented immigrants. They're going to crack down on that. And a part of that process is to get the cooperation of undocumented immigrants to be able to help them to identify these unscrupulous employers and to be able to stop them. And so a part of that is to provide the T visa, which is there for people in situations like that, unsafe situations. They're being forced to work without pay, they're being forced to work, they're being threatened, etc. It really depends on what your situation is. Now, another thing is this does not just apply to employers, the T visa. If you're in a situation where you were lured here by even another family member, unfortunately this does happen, where the family member, promised you the moon and the stars. I'm gonna get you up here. When you come, I'm gonna send you to school, and then I'm going to get you your papers. I'm gonna get you a good job, and then you end up coming and end up maybe taking care of that relative's children, cleaning the house at their behest. Then this is also a form of labor trafficking, where they are forcing you to, they first got you here by fraud, and then they're forcing you to do labor in their household. So that could possibly also qualify for a T visa. I do see scenarios like that where they convince even minors, they convince their brother or sister to send up their niece or nephew. And when the niece or nephew comes, they promise they're going to put them in school, they're going to get their papers, they're going to blah, blah, blah. And when they come here, they end up as basically household workers for that relative. And they end up being set back behind. They end up being abused. They end up being taken advantage of, and sometimes even threatened by the relative, that if you don't do all of these things, that I'm going to report you to ICE. These are examples of scenarios that could possibly qualify you for protection under the T visa. So, if any of this is at all familiar, you should schedule a consultation, and then we'll talk more about your particular circumstances to determine whether you qualify, and then get started on your case right away. So that's all for me. I don't see any more questions. I want to thank you for your questions. Thanks for tuning in. I will be back tomorrow as usual, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, where I will come with more information, and I want to come and see your questions, because that is why I'm here every night. I'm here to answer your immigration related questions. So thanks. If you would like to schedule a consultation, go to the link in my bio. It's going to take you to the website, where you'll see a phone number, contact form, and online chat. The scheduling coordinator is available up until 11 p.m. tonight, and then tomorrow 9:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. Tomorrow night as well, and the night after. All right, have a good night, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow.